since 2000, and he was diabetic, which is possibly why the insulin didn't kill him. He died in January of 2009, also believed to be from natural causes. In 2009, a new nurse's aide began working at Kerrison Care, and Beth befriended the 18-year-old woman. They began spending time together outside of work, and one day, Beth let it slip that she had intentionally overdosed patients with insulin. The young aide expressed the desire to go to the police, but Beth told her that there was no proof, so nobody would believe her. Then she convinced the woman that she had stopped. She explained that she had found God and that God had forgiven her. This must have eased the woman's conscience, because she never did report what Beth had told her. The reality was that Beth believed it was God that was telling her that these people should die. She would talk about it in her confession years later.
The point where you had these feelings in your stomach and almost that laughter after it happened,
yeah.
Is that the part that you didn't tell Dr. Khan?
Yeah.
Okay, I just wanted to be clear on that.
I told him about the laughter in my stomach, but not the feeling that this might be the person that God wants.
Okay.
Because I just found it so stupid.
It's your feelings, right?
Mm-hmm. I honestly felt like God wanted to use me. And Dr. Khan kept asking me, do you think God chose me for a special purpose? I kept saying no, because that did not sound like a special purpose, you know?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I just had a sense after my marriage broke up that God was going to use me for something. And then after a while, I started to really wonder after some of the murders if it was God or if it was the devil fooling me.
At this time, it's possible she was trying to stop. According to her own confession, she didn't inject any patients in 2009 and 2010. This would all change in 2011, though. She made it through part of 2011 without harming any patients. Maybe it's because she was in a relationship and her happiness kept the red surge at bay. In August of 2011, Beth and her girlfriend took a trip to Niagara Falls and had planned a future cruise, but the relationship ended before then. This may have been the catalyst for the next wave of attacks by Beth. 92-year-old Gladys Millard was a diabetic Alzheimer's patient whose staff admitted could be a handful. Hey, that's the nature of the work, though. On October 13, 2011, Beth again took it upon herself to decide that Gladys had had enough of life. Since Gladys was diabetic, Beth made sure to use a large dose of insulin and injected it into the elderly woman not long before the end of her shift. She left for home that night giggling to herself about what she had done. The nurses on the next shift found Gladys sweating and mumbling incoherently. They called the doctor, but there was nothing he could do. There was no way for him to know the true cause of the patient's ailment. Gladys died the following day. Helen Matheson was 95 years old when she became Beth's next victim. Helen was a widow who had also lost her son 10 years prior. Her two sisters had already passed, and Beth used this as a reason that Helen most likely desired to go be with her family. Helen was not diabetic, and she loved blueberry pie and ice cream, so on a break, Beth ran to the store and got some for her, pretty much choosing her last meal for her. Then she injected the woman with a large dose of insulin. Helen didn't question what the nurse was doing, because, well, she was the nurse. She was there to take care of her. It was October 25th when Beth injected her, and soon Helen's heart started to race. Then she began having seizures and fell into a coma. She died on October 27th. Just a week later, Beth's focus turned to 96-year-old Mary Zurowinski. There was no way that anyone could think that Mary was hoping to die. She was in good spirits, and people said she was looking forward to turning 100. Still, Beth believed that she was the next person on her list and injected her with insulin at the beginning of November. She also gave her a second drug that she said would increase the effectiveness of the insulin. Then, Beth left a note on Mary's chart that was for end-of-life care. The note read, "Mary was sitting at dining room table at 16:55 and was very pale. She started breathing in soft gasps, 30 per minute. She asked staff to put her to bed, quote, so I can die there, end quote. She was taken to the palliative room and put to bed. She then asked for someone to pray with her. PSWOR said Hail Mary with her, and Mary visibly relaxed. Sun was called. Mary died on November 7th. The very next day, Beth flew to Fort Lauderdale, Florida to depart on a cruise with her ex-girlfriend. They had already purchased tickets before they broke up, so they still agreed to go as friends. The 10-day cruise stopped in St. Thomas, the U.S. Virgin Islands, and Aruba. People said that Beth was in a great mood on the trip, and when she returned, it seemed that she was able to go into another period, refraining from injecting patients in her care with insulin. She said in her confession that during this time, when the red surge started to bubble up, she would read her Bible. She explained that she told God that she didn't believe He wanted her to help the elderly die anymore. Either she was wrong, or, more likely, it was just her that wanted to kill old people, not God, because it wasn't long before Beth had picked up a needle and decided that another person was no longer fit to remain of this earth. It didn't help that Beth was struggling with drug addiction on top of her mental illness. She had been taking hydromorphone whenever she got the chance to steal some from work. The care facility kept stricter tabs on hydromorphone than it did insulin, but there were still ways to get it. The easiest was to take it from a resident. Many residents weren't of sound enough mind to know exactly which pills they should be taking. She also admitted to opening the capsules, dumping the contents into her mouth, and then giving the empty capsules to the patient. And of course, when a resident died, there would be leftover medication that would suddenly disappear. Though she claimed to have never been on drugs at work, one of her coworkers said she once found Beth passed out in the basement of the facility while she was supposed to be on her shift.
Oh, the addiction lasted from, I think it started in 2008, so to 2014, at which time I went away and got treatment at a treatment center.
Okay.
But then I started using again, probably January 2016, I started using again.
Okay. And are you still using when you get your hands on them, or?
No,
Oh.
no. I'm going to stop using alcohol as well. I have friends in AA, and I've got a very clear plan. If I'm able to be out and about,
Right.
I have a very clear plan. And I also know if I'm not able to be out and about, that AA and Narcotics Anonymous do have some programs where they come into prison.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
that's my plan.
Well, that's good that you have a plan.
You confessed to 8 murders. You surely aren't going to AA on the outside. Helen Young was born in Scotland and served in the Royal Air Force during World War II. That's where she met Canadian Peter Young, and the two got married. A year later, Helen moved to Canada to spend her life with her husband. They had lived in Woodstock since 1971, and Peter passed away in 1988. After many years of remaining active and adventurous, at 90, Helen's health finally began to worsen and she ended up at the Carison Care facility. There, Beth felt that she was beginning to become difficult and decided that she couldn't possibly be happy with her life. Helen was diabetic, so when Beth gave her a large dose of insulin, the patient showed no adverse effects. Beth came in and gave her another large dose, which made the veteran begin having a seizure. Beth recorded her vital signs and marked her blood sugar levels as normal. Helen died on July 14, 2013. Beth began drinking on top of her drug use. She was drinking triple shots of rye daily as well as Bailey's. She was likely needing more and more substance to suppress her mounting guilt. On October 13, 2013, Beth met with her pastor and his wife where she admitted to what she had been doing. They prayed with her but never reported her confession. They would later say that they didn't believe her. If they had reported her to authorities, they may have saved 2 more lives. 79-year-old Maureen Pickering had been widowed since 2008 and had no children, but when she began struggling with Alzheimer's, friends admitted her to the Carison Care facility. Like most people suffering from Alzheimer's, Maureen could be a bit of a handful. Of course, Beth didn't like that, so near the end of March 2014, she gave the woman 2 large injections of insulin, telling her that they were vitamin shots. Beth confessed that she was laughing while administering the shots. The sense of power created such a euphoria that she couldn't help it. Maureen had a stroke and was sent to the hospital where she died a few days later on March 28th. Though Carison Care didn't suspect Beth of intentionally overdosing patients, they did know that she was making mistakes with the patient's medications. She had been written up multiple times for what the facility described a pattern of behaviors that were placing residents at risk. She had been given a 1-day, a 3-day, and 2 5-day suspensions while she worked there. The facility had reported these issues to Ontario's College of Nurses, but there's no record of the college taking any action regarding Beth's